Hi, fight fans. I am Kevin Iole. Thank you for joining me. On Saturday at the MGM Grand Garden in Las Vegas, we will have a heavyweight title fight when WBC champion Deontay Wilder puts his title on the line against Luis Ortiz in a rematch of a fight that was really fascinating in 2018. Wilder won that fight, you may recall, by 10th round stoppage, although in the 7th round he was almost stopped himself. Ortiz is a big puncher, and this is a compelling fight. Having said that, one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine is media and fans and even sometimes promoters and fighters saying this fight is going to save boxing or that fight is going to save boxing. And I just cringe whenever I hear that because there's no one fight that is going to save boxing. What helps boxing and what puts boxing in the best possible light is always when we have the fights the fans want to see, when the best fight the best, when the most compelling fights get made on a regular basis, when we don't have to worry about what side of the street a fighter is on, who promotes this fighter or what network that fighter is with, when the two guys that people think are the best and they want to see them fight actually fight in an expeditious manner. That is what helps boxing. And I think in the heavyweight division right now, we have a situation where the division is doing just that. They're starting to put the best fights together. It comes at a great time for the sport because the heavyweight division is as healthy now as it has been really since I think the mid-90s. In the mid-90s, you had a plethora of great heavyweights. You had Hall of Famers Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Riddick Bowe, all in their primes. And there were a number of other terrific heavyweights that were competing at that point. George Foreman was toward the end of his career. He was still out there. He's a Hall of Famer. Shannon Briggs, Ray Mercer, Tommy Morrison. You can go down the line. There were a lot of heavyweights at that time frame who were talented, who were good, and who would put up good fights against the best fighters in the world. I think we have a resurgence of the division now. I think clearly the top two heavyweights in the world, whatever order you want to put them in, 1 or 1A, Deontay Wilder, the WBC champion, and Tyson Fury, the lineal champion. Those two, I think, are a little bit ahead of the other guys. But I think number 3 is Andy Ruiz, who has the other 3 sanctioning body belts, and then Anthony Joshua, whom Ruiz defeated in June when he shockingly knocked him out. Those two will fight on December 7th in Saudi Arabia. And here's what I think is great about what's happening in boxing right now. This Ortiz-Wilder fight carries some significance because it was a good fight last time and because Wilder has already signed to fight Tyson Fury in a rematch. That rematch is expected to be held in February in Las Vegas of next year, conditioned upon, it's signed, but conditioned upon Wilder beating Ortiz. So that makes this fight on Saturday have greater significance. Now, I don't want to sit here and make Luis Ortiz out like he is Lennox Lewis or he is something that he is not, but he is a very solid fighter. And he reminds me, if we want to go back maybe into the 70s era, another great era of boxing, he reminds me of guys like Ernie Shavers. A lot of people consider him one of the hardest punchers of all time, if not the hardest puncher. Ron Lyle, a big puncher. Guys like that. Good fighters, not great. They can beat you with one punch. Ernie Shavers had Larry Holmes on the ground. Lyle had George Foreman down in an absolutely wild fight. If you search the internet for Foreman and Ron Lyle, if you have not seen it, that fight was on ABC's Wide World of Sports, if you remember that show. It was just a crazy, unbelievable fight. You can find that on the internet. And I think Ortiz is in that kind of frame as a fighter. I think Wilder is justifiably a big favorite. He was about a 7-1 favorite at the MGM Grand Sportsbook the last time I saw the odds. And I think justifiably so. He's in his prime of his career. He's the better fighter. When they fought the first time, Wilder was fighting with the flu, and yet he still did enough to win the fight. But Ortiz has that capability of defeating him. He has that power. He's also a product of the Cuban boxing system. He fought 450, 500 times in the amateurs. He can box. And one thing we know that I think Tyson Fury showed against Deontay Wilder is he is vulnerable to guys who can box. If you throw straight punches down the middle, if you're slick, if you move a little bit, you can cause Deontay some trouble. I think that creates some intrigue in this fight. But here's what is so great. When you look, we have the heavyweight division lined up now for quite a while with some very good fights. After the fight on Saturday night, we're going to see Ruiz and Joshua 2 in Saudi Arabia that'll be on DAZN on December 7th. I've talked to a lot of people about what they think in that fight. I still haven't formulated my full opinion on that one yet. I'm leaning toward Ruiz again because of some things I've heard Joshua say. I don't know that he's so mentally strong at this point, but I'll reserve judgment on my pick on that fight till later. But I think that that is a really compelling fight. That's going to be for 3 of the 4 sanctioning body belts. And then in February, assuming that Wilder beats Ortiz on Saturday, we are going to have Fury versus Wilder in a rematch of another 2018 bout that was unbelievable. That one was a split draw where one judge had it for Fury, one judge had it for Wilder, and the third judge had it a draw like I had it. But what that is putting us on the path to is having one champion sometime in either late 2020, 2020 or 2021. And I think that that is really what people want. And even if one guy, let's say the IBF title splinters off, because the IBF has already said that the Ruiz-Joshua winner has to fight Kubrat Pulev. So if that happens, maybe they decide they don't want to fight Kubrat Pulev. Whoever wins that fight, they'd rather fight the Fury-Wilder winner. Then the IBF title may go to somebody else, but then the other person is going to be the lineal champion, the WBA, the WBC, and the WBO champion, and that person will be the champion in the division. And so I think we can see by late next year, maybe early the year after that, that we're going to be in really good shape with one person at the top of the heavyweight division. The other thing that's great is these are all compelling fights. I mean, I think this is going to be a bombs away fight on Saturday. Wilder's not a guy that gets in there and plays. You know, he's a guy that gets in there, and his strength is his weakness, because he comes in to knock you out, to not only knock you out, but to take your head off. But when he does that, he is vulnerable, and he's vulnerable to guys who can box. He's vulnerable to guys who throw straight punches, who can get out of the way of those big shots he throws. He says a lot of times, and I think with some justification, guys fighting me have to be perfect for 12 rounds. I have to be perfect for 2 seconds. And that is true. Ortiz can't afford to get hit with a combination or he's going to go out. We know Wilder has that kind of power. I'm not ready to say yet that Wilder is the biggest puncher in the history of the heavyweight division, but I think he is up there. He hits very, very hard, and he deserves to be considered among the greatest. I don't want to say top 3 or top 5 or top 10, but he is among the biggest punchers we have seen in the heavyweight division. And I think that is showering him with a lot of praise. So this fight on Saturday carries a lot of significance. We're going into an era where there are going to be a lot of good heavyweight fights. And the one thing that we know from history is if the heavyweight division is strong, it piques interest in people who are just kind of casual fans. And there is so much good going on in boxing that isn't being reported. There are so many talented young fighters that are out there. Guys like Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez, and those are young guys. Some of them just became champions. Some may become champions in the near future. There are elite fighters all over the place now. The sport is really, in my mind, in a golden age in a lot of ways. We got a lot of talent out there, but there's a lot of problems still with boxing. And I think if these heavyweights can do anything, if they can generate interest in other divisions, that is going to be good for boxing in the long haul. And hopefully it will convince the promoters and the TV networks not to take these appearance fights and not to put these easy fights on. We want to see the two best, the two compelling fighters fight each other on a regular basis. I understand that boxing is a brutal sport and that you get out there and sometimes you have to take a little bit of a breather. If you're fighting, let's just say Wilder's case, if he goes out there and he fights Ortiz, Fury, then the Joshua Ruiz winner, I don't think anybody would give him a hard time if he took one slightly lesser fight after that. But we can't make it be years in between. We have to have them fighting on a regular basis. I think we're really set up for a good era in heavyweight boxing, and a heavyweight boxing goes, so goes the rest of the sport. That's the old saying, and I believe that carries a lot of weight. There's a lot of truth to that. So enjoy Saturday's fight. I think it's going to be fireworks. It's going to be a lot of fun. And enjoy these fights coming up, because we are seeing the best in heavyweight boxing that we've seen in more than 2 decades. It's really unbelievable what we have going now. Enjoy the fights, everybody. For Yahoo Sports, I am Kevin Iole.